how to draw males in any body types.
So kind of like in the previous video where we did female body types, there's a much similar concept here. There are some standards, especially when it comes to the body proportions in general for a guide. The adult head is about 7.5 times the rest of the body. Again, depending on your style, depending on the person, the character you're going for. It might be 6, it might be 8. You know, usually it's higher for characters that look tall, especially. So that's pretty much a standard, unless you want to break the rules, but you want to know the rules before you can break them. That said, we're going to be having a slightly different approach. I highly recommend you guys watch that video because some of the principles there can be used here as well. Obviously, with the female, there are going to be some differences, especially in the torso area where you're having more of an hourglass look. Now, you're going to see much less of that with a male, and obviously it varies depending on the character. You know, not everybody's hourglass torso is the same. Some are more hourglassy than others, but much less so in a male. There's still a lot you can take away from watching that video. Just to make this video even slightly more different, I'm going to have a slightly different approach to the actual drawing and, you know, the approach you can take. So as you can see here, I have the lines separating all the sections from 1 to 8. And we have the head starting in the first part, occupying most of, if not all of that section. And then you have the shoulders kind of beginning in the upper part of the second and ending at the end of the third. The torso is really like 2 parts together. You have the rib cage side, and then you have what connects to the waist. And I have this line kind of letting me know how the spine is kind of going to go, and it just overall helps put a 3D visual in my head of how this body is going to be positioned. Using simple strokes and lines, draw very loosely. It helps with your sketches, and draw just simple shapes so you know where the things are going to be positioned. I don't even care about the details at this point. A decent understanding of anatomy, nothing too crazy, but just so you know where certain lines are going to curve, what parts of the body overlap with one another, what parts of the muscles kind of get attached to others, you know, bicep, tricep, simple stuff, abs, obliques, but you don't need to go too crazy with it. Just have a decent idea, at least from the start, and it'll help a great deal. It helps you know what lines to connect, where the joints are, so also a skeletal idea of the human body helps a great deal. You do this, you know where the feet is going to be positioned, and then once you know where the feet is going to be positioned, again, just simple shapes. Once you know that, then you have a decent idea of where the knees are going to be, and then you just connect the dots with the knowledge and research you've put together. Have a little triangle for the crotch area just to know how much space to leave before you really start to draw those lines down for like his thighs that connect to the knee and then all of that. Then lines to define the shoulders a lot more so they pop out, right? You know, the broader the shoulders, the more defined the character looks, the more fit they look. And then I always have the fist below the waist, somewhere towards the end of the 4th section. And then again, once you know where the fist ends, especially if the character's hands are just straight down, you know where his elbow is going to be, and then you know how to connect the dots. Keep in mind for the parts that are going to overlap. And now I'm just drawing the same thing, but now from behind. Have these little circle lines behind the calves that just help me know where that goes and how, you know, behind the knees kind of look to a degree. Notice that line for the spine, how it looks from front and then how it looks behind. Again, it helps give me a 3-dimensional sense of how the character is positioned, how they're standing, and all that. It's not completely straight on, so you keep in mind of the parts that overlap. We're not going to see any face at all, so you want to keep track of how that kind of overlaps with the neck and all of that, especially drawing the ears from behind. We don't get to see, you know, a lot of... It's so easy to draw a head from behind. There's a lot of stuff you don't have to worry about. And again, I'm just focused on the positions here. You know, it's not going to be perfect now. It kind of get better and better with slight adjustments here and there. But at least for the most part, everything is kind of positioned appropriately. And then after that, you go in with the details. Adding in the details, obviously some experience is coming in here because I already know where things go and I'm not breaking down the face. Again, I have separate videos on this channel that you guys can go check out that go into detail, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just adding in the details for how the face is going to look and, you know, all the body parts and having more defined lines versus this mess. Notice how the head, again, occupies most of that first sector, if not the whole thing. And that's something to keep in mind. And regardless of the body type, especially for a traditional human, they're going to occupy, for the most part, that whole section. But the younger they are, the less they occupy. Again, it depends. I'm sure you guys have seen people with ridiculously big heads. So feel free to break some rules and take some liberties. But in general, that section is a nice range to play with. But, you know, things like babies will be much smaller, maybe even half of that sector. And then we'll see in future examples here in this same video where I break down different body types for a baby and whatever. Again, once you guys kind of get comfortable in this space, you will feel more liberated to make those alterations depending on your art style or whatever. But here, just define lines, adding in the toes right here, just simple lines separating it. Again, some styles have the lines be completely straight, but here I'm having it do a little subtle S curve just to show some more of a organic feel to the toes. Adding the lines for the muscles, I have separate videos that kind of go into detail and breaking down those muscles. Again, it can also be stylistic, and even regular human beings have different muscular structures. So you guys can add that to your research when putting that together. Same thing here, and just adding in the details for the back. The back muscles, again, I have videos that go into detail about all these things. But we're just having fun defining those lines and giving them a little more purpose. Variations here and there, because again, it was a loose sketch. Not everything's going to be perfect. For the most part, we're good. But keep in mind, of all those parts you see that kind of overlap because of the camera angle we're looking from, not everything is so separated. You know, there is some subtle foreshortening going on. Now, another example of doing this for, say, a different person, maybe not necessarily an adult, but a shorter character. And again, there will be people out there that are this height that are adults. You know what I mean? This is just a general standard thing. Again, you can break the rules. But the shorter character, the head's still occupied for the most part. Same rules applied. I know where the feet is going to be. So I know how much the torso is going to take. And because I know that, and I know where the feet's going to be, I have a decent idea of where the knees are going to be, and I just connect the dots. I know where his fist is going to be, below the waist, and after that, I just connect the dots. These are really quick, loose sketches. I recommend that you guys play around with your drawings and try to draw quickly, too, and see if you can have a general gist of getting it correctly. And then, same thing, reduce the opacity, and now I'm just going in with details. Obviously, if you're drawing traditionally, you can kind of lightly erase, but erase just enough to where you still see some of the lines where so you know where things go, and then you go in with more defined lines. And we're just imagining this is the same character, but maybe slightly younger. And even though he's younger, it's still a little bit muscular, have broad shoulders. There's certain things to look out for when you're drawing muscular characters. And we'll see all of that, again, in a little more detail in the same video. Drawing a closed fist for this one. And for the most part, here's our character, but maybe a younger version. Here are examples of how maybe a baby might look. Again, not necessarily occupying all of the sector, but maybe a 3/4 of it, and then we're just putting the rest together, right? So the proportions are different the younger the character becomes, or the younger the character is. In some cases, the older the character is as well. Once you're used to kind of breaking down the body in this way, you should get really comfortable. Here's one where it's not 7.5, it's 8, maybe even 8.5. And you can see the head occupying most of the sector above everything. And then I know where the feet's gonna be, and now I'm just connecting the dots. Maybe he's a basketball player, so I gave him a little basketball. And this is basically all I'm talking about. And once you can kind of break down the body, even if in this kind of simple way, you should be good. You see those two sectors for the torso, the rib cage area, and the part that connects to the waist, the line for the spine, and then, you know, connecting the dots, the part where the shoulder pops out of, you know where the elbow is going to be, and then you just connect. And then, yeah, there you go. An example to see kind of in real time how the character would look less muscular if the shoulders are not as broad, they're a little less curved, the chest is not as wide, right? The character still looks kind of fit, but they look less, you know, like they could beat your A. And so once you get to a point where you're comfortable morphing the character in this way, you can kind of do almost anything you want. Just keep track of all the parts that kind of overlap, keeping that three-dimensional sense to the whole drawing. Here's the same character again a couple more times, but if we wanted to draw a muscular version of the character, key thing, like I said, is to know where the muscles go. Have a decent idea, do some research on where all those bumps happen. There's another video that goes into more detail about drawing muscles, so you can watch that as well. But here, the neck is usually thicker for more muscular characters. The shoulder area will kind of have a bump. The higher the bump, the more muscular they look. It's basically the same drawing, but all those bumps and curves are more accentuated. Throw in some veins if you want. Even the chest is gonna pop out a little more, and then the abs and obliques are more defined. Character overall is kind of wider, did not skip leg day, and that's really it. You would just essentially be adding and subtracting muscles to the same body. And if you wanted to draw a skinnier character, it would be the same thing, but in the opposite direction. Maybe this dude is even a little hungry. A thinner neck for sure, thinner legs, thinner all around. Keep in mind, keep track of all the subtle lines that I'm adding to the drawing. Before, we'll be drawing lines all over the body to show that muscle definition. Here, we'll be drawing lines to show more of a skeletal definition. Sometimes when the character isn't as defined, their jawline also looks kind of weird. So you can have a jawline like this, but it's usually on older characters where the jawline is not defined at all. Here, we could also define the cheekbones a little bit, kind of like we did with the muscular character in the face, but, you know, it's up to you. And then if you want a more plus-size character, the same rules apply, except now we're adding and subtracting fat to the places that have a lot of fat cells. So we'll have a lot of that in the cheek area, you may have some rolls in the neck, the overall body will be wider, less definition all around, and this will also come with some research on looking at plus-size people and where those roles happen or where they tend to happen and seeing where that applies best to your character. How big do you want them to be? Again, it's up to you. You just keep adding and adding and adding, but you add fat to some places more than others depending on the fat cell structure of that body. There's way more overlap here, obviously, and say you just keep adding where you see fit. Sometimes maybe it's just the upper part that you want to add fat to, and maybe the person has more fit legs. You can kind of mix and match and do whatever works for you. And these are kind of the approaches I have. Saggy, kind of big. You kind of just want to have a decent idea of how to morph, how to add and subtract, whether it be muscle or fat, and then you'll be able to get whatever body type you want. The same rules apply to whatever age, you know, you're drawing with. Here, obviously, we're doing this on an adult, but you could do this on, you know, anybody. You can add fat everywhere, but the first places to add fat are the places that I'm highlighting. You can see with this character as well, you know, you're adding more fat to the cheeks, but also to the jawline. It's less defined versus the other body types. It really depends on you and how much research you do. And that's all, folks. Hopefully this helped and you guys can take some of these tips and apply them to your characters. Diversify your characters so that, you know, they don't all look the same, no same face syndrome and all that. For the 2.5 people that made it to the end of this video, thank you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, Holy Ghost, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Turn on all notifications. Check out my comic Apple Black, published and serialized on Saturday AM. Saturday AMs for the shonen stuff, Saturday PMs for the seinen stuff, and Saturday brunches for the josei. Please check out the app. The latest issues of all the magazines are free to read. And if you subscribe, you get access to everything on the app, including Apple Black. Check out more videos. It's White Manga, and I'm Audi 9000.